Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make a Pizookie. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. In case you haven't had one before, a Pizookie is basically a cross between a pie and a cookie. It is made in a skillet pan, though you could also make it in a pie plate, and I think you're going to absolutely love it. This is great for serving warm, topped with ice cream, and just digging in and enjoying it while it's still gooey and hot. Let's go ahead and get started, and you are going to need a 10-inch skillet for today's recipe. Now, I'm using a cast iron skillet. You need to make sure that you are using one that is oven safe because we're going to be baking our Pizookie in this pan. Note that if you want to make today's recipe in a pie plate instead, you're still going to start out in a skillet because we'll be browning our butter, and then you can pour everything into the pie plate. Now, to give this giant cookie a really good flavor, I like to start with browned butter. So you're going to need 3/4 cup of unsalted butter for today's recipe, and we can just drop it right in the pan. And we are going to cook this until it's nice and browned. If you've never browned butter before, you're going to just love this flavor. We're gonna turn our stovetop heat to medium, and we're just gonna let this butter melt. And once it has melted, you're going to want to stir pretty frequently, and you're definitely gonna wanna keep an eye on it. And we're just going to stand here and stir our butter until it begins to sizzle and pop and fizz. Now, what's happening here is we're cooking all of the water out of our butter, and eventually we're going to be browning the milk solids that are in here, which is what gives browned butter such a great flavor. It takes a little bit of patience. You do not want to turn up your heat too high, and you don't want to walk away or you'll burn it. But after a couple minutes, the popping and fizzing should slow down, and you should begin to notice some of those milk solids browning on the bottom of the pan. Now, we are using a dark pan, so it can be kind of hard to see, so I wanna see if you can see here. See those little brown bits? That means that this butter is ready to go, so we're going to immediately remove it from the heat. And now you're going to need to have a little bit of patience and wait for this butter to cool for 30 minutes before we go any further. I promise waiting is the hardest part of this whole recipe. Now, once your butter has pretty much finished cooling, you'll want to go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, this is cooled enough that I feel comfortable moving forward, so I'm going to add 3/4 cup of brown sugar, firmly packed brown sugar. You can use light brown sugar if you'd like, but personally, I like to use a blend of light and dark sugars, which is what I'm using today. We're also going to add 2/3 cup of granulated sugar. And for today's recipe, we're also going to be adding 1 large egg, and your eggs should be room temperature, and 1 large egg yolk. Finally, add a teaspoon of vanilla extract for a little extra flavor. And we're just going to stir all of these ingredients together until they are completely combined in our skillet. Okay, now for our dry ingredients. You could technically get away with potentially adding all of your ingredients right to the skillet, but I always worry about my leaveners being nicely combined, so I like to do this in a separate bowl. Here I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and I'm going to be adding a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm just gonna stir everything together until it's nicely combined. I just worry about ending up with a pocket of baking powder or salt if I don't stir it in a separate bowl. So now we can go ahead and add this into our skillet now that we've nicely combined it. And we're going to work everything together until that flour mixture is completely absorbed. Now, this may seem a little bit dry and crumbly as you're working everything together. Just have a little bit of patience. It will all come together. And once you do have it completely combined, we are going to add 6 ounces of chocolate. You can use chocolate chips if you'd like, but I just like to use coarsely chopped chocolate bars because I just prefer those. Just a better quality chocolate. All right, stir in that chocolate until it's nicely distributed. And now we're just going to work this dough into an even layer. I like to use a spoon just to kind of like flatten it because I want it to be nice and flat on the surface and nicely packed into the skillet. All right, let's take this over to our preheated oven now where it's going to need to bake for about 30 minutes. The top should be a nice light golden brown color on top when it's finished. Now, I really recommend enjoying a Pizookie while it's warm, but I also recommend waiting about 10 to 15 minutes before digging in because it can just be so hot fresh out of the oven that it can also be molten and difficult to enjoy. Of course, I also recommend topping with vanilla ice cream, of course. And that is how you make a Pizookie at home. I really hope you guys enjoyed today's recipe, and if you try this one out, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. You really need a spoon for this.